You couldn't answer. You couldn't answer.
All right, what's the question?
Many of the questions. I'd get you the test. I'd like to give it. But I guarantee you that Joe Biden could not answer those questions. Okay?
So recently on Fox News, there was a somewhat humorous exchange between President Trump and Chris Wallace. They were discussing Trump's results on the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. I'm going to play the clip, then I'm going to tell you more about the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, and then finally I'm going to test you watching from home on the Montreal Cognitive Assessment to see how you do. I'm going to give you the test right here in this video so you can see how you do on this assessment. So have a pencil and paper handy for that part of the video. But first, let's play the Fox News clip. For context, Wallace is telling Trump about a recent Fox News poll that indicated that more people, 47%, believe Joe Biden has mental soundness to serve effectively as president, while only 43% believe the same about President Trump. And then Trump responds by talking about this test he took, the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. He doesn't name it, but that's what it is. Here's the clip.
If I may, sir, respectfully, in the Fox poll, they asked people, who is more competent? Whose mind is sounder? Biden beats you in that.
Well, I tell you what, let's take a test. Let's take a test right now. Let's go down. Joe and I will take a test. Let him take the same test that I took.
Incidentally, I took the test too when I heard that you passed it.
Yeah, how did you do it?
Well, it's not the hardest test.
No, but
there's a picture and it says, what's that? And it's an elephant.
No. You see, that's all misrepresentation.
Well, that's what it was on the web.
It's all misrepresentation. Because, yes, the first few questions are easy, but I'll bet you couldn't even answer the last 5 questions. I'll bet you couldn't. They get very hard, the last 5 questions.
Well, one of them was count back from 100 by 7.
And let me tell you,
93.
you couldn't answer. You couldn't answer.
All right, what's the question?
Many of the questions. I'd get you the test. I'd like to give it. But I guarantee you that Joe Biden could not answer those questions. Okay? And I answered all 35 questions correctly.
And earlier this month, Trump had spoken to Hannity about the assessment in a telephone interview. And Trump said that he aced this test, and the doctors at Walter Reed, where he took it, he said that the doctors were all amazed and surprised, and they told Trump that his results were unbelievable. And rarely does anyone do what Trump did on that test. So, what is the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, the test that Trump is talking about here? It is a test with some fairly basic questions that measure attention and concentration, as well as certain basic skills like being able to draw a simple picture and to name a few animals. It's basically a test for cognitive impairment due to Alzheimer's disease and other things. It's not an IQ test or anything like that. And in fact, out of the total 30 points, the average score is fairly high. I'll tell you what the average is and all that at the end of the video. But first, I want to give you the test right here in this video so you can score yourself. But before I do this, let me state some disclaimers, okay? I'm a CPA. I'm not a neurologist. I'm not a medical doctor, so I'm not going to elaborate too much on that. This YouTube video that you're watching right now is strictly for entertainment purposes. It's for general information, entertainment purposes. I'm not a professional here, okay? A professional who gives this test, who would administer this test to you, would give it very differently, right? They would probably say things differently. Also, I'm asking you to write your answers down so you can grade yourself at the end. While in the real test, you would be answering a lot of these questions verbally, and the administrator would be grading you on them. You wouldn't grade yourself. Whoever's giving you the test would grade you, right? That's obviously a very different thing than writing down some of these answers. So my point is, this is all just for fun, okay? This is not a medical diagnosis. This is a YouTube video. All right, but let's get to the test. Note that there are different versions of this test, but they ask the same kind of question. For example, one of the questions on the test, probably the easiest one, asks you to name certain animals. In the test you're going to see here in a bit, one of the animals is a camel. I hope I didn't give away too much there. But I've seen other versions of the test where a camel is not one of the animals you have to name. You know, it's like an elephant instead or something like that. So I don't know the exact version that Trump took, but they're all the same kind of question, which is maybe some details like that being different, okay? Now onto the test. We're going to go through the test first and then do the answers at the end. Just note that some of these questions are very easy and others are a little bit more difficult, okay? So you got your pencil and paper ready? If not, pause the video right now and go get a pencil and paper. Just know that we're going to be using the paper a lot, okay? So don't use too much space for each question, all right? Okay, first question, here it goes. Probably the trickiest one to do from home without actually printing out the test, but we're gonna try it, okay? All right, so first thing I want you to do is on your screen, draw a line from a number to a letter in ascending order. Start at number 1, then draw a line from 1 to A, and then from A to 2, and so on, and end here on letter E. You can pause the video here while you do this, and then when you're done, remember the pattern you drew on your screen. okay, or in your mind, right? Can you recall the pattern you drew? Do you kind of have a mental image of it? Do you got it? All right, so I said we would grade the test later, but we're going to grade this one now. So the pattern you should have made should have looked something like this. If the pattern you made on your screen that you have kind of retained in your mind looks like this, and you get a point. If not, then no point for this question. Easy thing here is no line should cross in the pattern that you made, okay? All right, next question. You'll need pencil and paper for this one. Okay, you see the design on your screen. I want you to draw that design on your pencil and paper. This isn't a trick question, by the way, folks. Go ahead and pause the video until you're done drawing that shape. All right, next question. You'll need your pencil and paper as well for this one. So on your paper, I want you to draw a clock for me. Make a big circle and put all the numbers where they go, and then set the time for the time 10 past 11. Go ahead and pause the video until you're done doing this. All right, now I want you to write down the names of these 3 animals on your paper. Again, this is not a trick question. Just go ahead and pause the video while you do that, and while the video is paused, write down the name of these 3 animals, the names of these 3 animals. All right, now once you've done that, I'm going to read you a list of words, and I want you to concentrate because I want you to remember them now and later on, okay? So listen carefully to the words I'm about to say. Don't write them down while I'm talking, okay? Then what I want you to do is, after I'm done saying the words, pause the video and write down the words I said on your paper, and don't cheat. Okay, here are the words: face, velvet, church, daisy, red. Okay, now pause the video and write down these words on your paper. All right, now the actual test, which is verbal, the test giver would read the words again and ask you to repeat them back. But since you wrote them down, we're not going to do that. But I will ask you to remember these words again a little later, okay? And don't cheat when I do that. Okay, here's the next question. I'm going to say some numbers, and after I'm done saying them, I want you to write them down on your paper. Don't rewind, don't cheat, okay? Once I'm done saying the numbers, simply pause the video and write down the numbers I said on your paper without rewinding and listening to the numbers again, okay? All right, so here are the numbers: 2, 1, 8, 5, 4. Now pause the video and write those numbers down on your paper. Okay, next I'm going to say some more numbers, but this time when I'm done, you pause the video and write them on your paper in the backward order. So you'd write them in the backward order. 7, 4, 2. Now pause the video and write those numbers down on your paper in backward order. Now, next exercise, I want you to hold your pencil in your hand over a blank section of your paper, and I'm going to read a sequence of letters, and every time I say the letter A, I want you to make a mark, a line or something on your paper, so that at the end, we can count how many times you heard me say the letter A. When I say a different letter, do not make a mark on your paper. Okay, here we go. F, B, A, C, M, N, A, J, K, L, B, A, F, A, K, D, E, A, J, A, M, O, F, A, B. Okay, moving on to the next question. Now I want you to write on your paper the number 100. And then I want you to count backward by sevens from 100. So start with the number 100 and count backward by sevens. And write each number on your paper. Do it 5 times. Okay, so you're going to start with 100. Then you're going to subtract 7, subtract 7, subtract 7, subtract 7, subtract 7. Okay, so count backwards from 100 by 7 and do that 5 times. So at the end, you should have 6 numbers on your paper, right? 100 and then the other 5 numbers that you calculated in your head by counting backward from 100 by 7. Okay, you can pause the video here and go through that exercise. Again, don't do the math on your paper. In the real test, this question is verbal, so no cheating. All right, go. Okay, now I'm going to read some sentences to you, and I want you to listen very carefully because when I'm done, I want you to write on your paper exactly what I said. Okay, here's the first sentence. I only know that John is the one to help today. Pause the video, don't rewind, don't cheat, and write that sentence on your paper. Okay, now I'm going to read you another sentence, and same thing. You say it back to me exactly as I say it to you, okay? Here's the next sentence. The cat always hid under the couch when dogs were in the room. Okay, so pause the video, don't rewind, and write that sentence on your paper. All right, next question. I want you to write down as many words as you can that start with a certain letter of the alphabet. You will have 60 seconds to write down these words that start with this particular letter. Okay, so when I start the timer on the screen, you write down as many words as you can that start with a certain letter I will tell you. The only rules are that proper names, names of places or people, are not allowed. So you can't say things like Bob or Boston, okay, if the letter is B. And you can't say any numbers either. And lastly, make sure all the words are different. So if you say a word like boat, you can't also include boats and boating and boated and things like that, okay? Make sure all the words are unique. Okay, so I'm going to start the timer right when I say the letter, and you need to write down on your paper as many words as you can think of that start with that letter in 60 seconds, okay? Ready? The letter is F. Okay, so the minute is up. Now we'll move on to the next question. Before we get to the next question, I just want you to think in your head how a banana and an orange are alike. This isn't a trick question. Answer being, they're both fruit. Okay, there might be some other things you can think of, but you know, they're both fruit, okay? Just like you did with a banana and an orange in your head. Now I want you to write down on your paper how a train and a bicycle are alike, okay? Go ahead and pause the video and write down on your paper how a train and a bicycle are alike. Now, similar thing, write down on your paper how a watch and a ruler are alike. Go ahead and pause the video, write down on your paper how a watch and a ruler are alike. All right, now a little while ago I read you a short list of words in a previous question, so without looking at your previous answer, I want you to write down for me one more time, write down those words on your piece of paper. Now pause the video, don't cheat, don't look back, but write down those words again on your piece of paper. Okay, just the last few questions here. Now, without checking your phone or computer or calendar or watch, I want you to write down on your paper the date today, month, day, and year. So go ahead and pause the video and do that now. Next, I want you to write down on your piece of paper the day of the week it is today, again without checking a calendar. Go ahead and pause the video and write down the day of the week. Next, I want you to write down on your paper where you are right now, just the name of the building you're in. Go ahead and pause the video and write down the name of the building where you're at right now. Next, I want you to write down on your paper the name of the city that you are in right now. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and write down the name of the city where you are right now. All right, so we're all done with the test now. Now let's go back over your answers and calculate your score. You might want somebody else to grade you on this because I know for some of these it can be difficult to grade yourself. And frankly, this test is properly administered by a professional. So in the proper administration of this test, you wouldn't be grading yourself. But if there's nobody around, that's okay. You can grade yourself. Just be honest and keep track of your cumulative score, okay? Your cumulative number of points as you go. All right, so for the very first one, the very first question where you drew lines connecting the letters and numbers, either you got that one right or you didn't. We scored it earlier, right? So give yourself 1 point if you got that right or 0 points if you didn't. All right, next up is your drawing of the cube. So basically, if your drawing looks just like the cube, you get a point. Here are the requirements. Drawing must be three-dimensional. All lines are drawn. All lines meet with little or no space. No line is added. Lines are relatively parallel and their length is similar. Obviously, I can't judge your drawing, but does your drawing look like the cube? Be honest. If so, give yourself 1 point. If not, give yourself no points. If you're not sure, maybe ask somebody else. Next up is the clock. Here is what the clock should look like. There are a maximum of 3 points for this. You get 1 point for the correct shape of the clock. It basically has to be a circle. You get another point for correctly placing the numbers on the clock. in the correct quadrants. And finally, you'll get another point for correctly placing the hands on the clock like this, showing the time 10 past 11. Now we're on to the animals. You get 1 point for each correct animal that you named. And the names of the animals in order are lion, rhinoceros, and camel, or possibly dromedary. Some people call camels dromedaries, okay? So you get a point each if you correctly named an animal, okay? So a maximum of 3 points possible here. If you wrote lion, rhinoceros, and camel on your page, you get 3 points because you named them all correctly. All right, the next question, which was basically repeating back to me the words face, velvet, church, daisy, and red the first time, you actually get no points for that. So let's move on. All right, so the next question had to do with remembering a series of numbers. The correct series is 2, 1, 8, 5, 4. So if you wrote that down, 2, 1, 8, 5, 4. If you wrote that sequence of numbers down on your paper for the next question, give yourself 1 point. The next question had to do with remembering a series of numbers and producing them backwards. So the numbers I told you were 7, 4, 2, and because you had to recall them backwards, the answer to the next question is 2, 4, 7. So if you put 2, 4, 7 for the next question, you get an additional point. The next question was where I read to you random letters and you had to make a mark on your paper every time you heard the letter A. So you should have 11 marks on your paper for this question because I said the letter A 11 times during that sequence. So you're actually allowed 1 mistake for this question, okay? So if you have 10, that means you missed 1, or you have 11, which means you got all the A's correct, or if you have 12 marks on your paper, which means you heard an extra A in there somewhere, then you get 1 point. Okay, so if you got 10, 11, or 12 marks on your paper, you get 1 point. But if you have any other number of marks on your paper for this question, you get no points for it. If you have less than 10 or more than 12, no points. All right. The next question was counting backwards from 100 by 7. Okay, so here are the correct responses. 93, then 86, then 79, then 72, and then 65. So the way this question is scored is you get 3 points if you did 4 or 5 correct subtractions. You get 2 points if you did 2 or 3 correct subtractions. You get 1 point if you did 1 correct subtraction, and you get no points if you did no correct subtractions. Okay, so what do I mean by correct subtractions? Well, first of all, if you got them all right, then you did 5 correct subtractions. Okay, so you get 3 points for that. Now, what if you messed up on the first subtraction and you thought the first answer was 94 instead of 93? But after that point, you correctly subtracted 7 from each number. So, for example, if your answers were 94, okay, you got that one wrong, but then you correctly subtracted 7 from 94 and got 87, right? 87 is 7 less than 94. That's a correct subtraction, okay? So if you went, 94, 87, and then you were right for the rest of the time, 80, 73, 66, then those last 4 answers you put were all correct subtractions, okay? Your first answer, 94, was not a correct subtraction, but since you did 4 subsequent correct subtractions, you get 3 points for this one as well. And to reiterate, if you did 4 or 5 correct subtractions, you get 3 points, okay? If you did 2 or 3 correct subtractions, you get 2 points. If you did 1 correct subtraction, you get 1 point. And if you did no correct subtractions, you get no points for this question. All right, next 2 questions have to do with you remembering and writing down exactly the sentence that I told you. So next up on your paper, you should have written down word for word the sentence, "I only know that John is the one to help today." If you missed a word or added a word or put a word in the wrong order, you get no points. If you wrote that sentence down perfectly, word for word, you get 1 point. Same thing for the next sentence. The next sentence I read was, "The cat always hid under the couch when dogs were in the room." So if you wrote that sentence down perfectly, you get an additional point. If you messed up at all, you get no points. All right, next question, you had to come up with words that start with the letter F, and you had to avoid certain words like proper nouns, numbers, and different forms of the same word, okay? So, for example, you could say free as your word, but then freedom and freeing wouldn't count because they're just different forms of the word. All right. Anyway, if you were able to come up with at least 11 words beginning with the letter F, right? That means 11 or more words following the rules for the words that I told you about previously, you get 1 point. Okay. If you only came up with 10 or fewer words beginning with F, you get no points for this question. All right, now for the next couple questions, you were given the example that an orange and a banana are both alike and that they're both fruit, and you were asked to write down, first of all, how a train and a bicycle are both alike. So although you weren't cued into this, what the test is looking for here is abstraction, all right? So acceptable answers here would have to do something, with something along the lines of a bicycle and a train are both means of transportation. You can use both of them to get somewhere, something like that. So if your answer was something along those lines, you get a point. You don't get a point if you said something like, well, both the train and a bicycle have wheels, okay? Similarly, with the next question, you were asked for the similarity between a ruler and a watch. What the test was looking for was that they both measured things. They're both measuring tools, something along those lines. So if you put something along those lines, you get 1 point for that question, okay? You could get a possible of 1 point for the question about a bicycle and a train, and you could potentially get an additional point for the question about a watch and a ruler. But with the watch and the ruler, if you simply said, oh, the similarity is they both have numbers on them, you don't get a point, okay? All right, now the next question. I asked you to recall the words that I read to you a few minutes previously in the test, okay? So the words were face, velvet, church, daisy, and red. So give yourself 1 point for each word that you recalled for this question. Order does not matter. So if you said daisy, red, velvet, church, face, different order than what I said, but still you got them all, you would still get the full 5 points. If you only came out with velvet, face, and daisy, you would get 3 points, okay? And so on and so forth. All right, now the last questions you were asked to write down very basic facts. Today's date, the day of the week, the building you're located in, and the city you're in. Okay, so obviously these questions don't have the same answer for everybody. So you would obviously check today's date and day of the week by looking at a calendar, and you can verify the building you're in and the city you're in by asking somebody, right? If you're not sure. So if you got everything in the last bit correct, meaning that you correctly wrote down the date today, right, the month, day, and year, you correctly wrote down the day of the week it is today, and you correctly wrote down the name of the building you're in as well as the city you're in, you would get 6 points total, okay? All right, now go back, and if you haven't already, tally up your points. Then add 1 point if you have 12 years or fewer of formal education. So basically, if you have a high school education and that's it, or less than a high school education, you would add 1 point to your score. So let's say in your score, you got 25 points, right, just from taking the test. But if you have a high school or less education level, you would add 1 point to that, so your score would actually be 26. Okay, so how'd you do? What was your score? Let me know in the comments below. Of course, if you're not comfortable sharing your score, that's perfectly fine. Maybe just let us know what you think about this test, what you think about Donald Trump saying that the doctors were amazed by his performance. Just let me know what you think about this test. And by the way, a score of 26 or above is considered normal. That said, like I stated at the beginning of the video, this is a YouTube video. It's not the real test. The real test is administered by a trained professional, and it is more verbal than what you just did, where the test was pretty much all in writing, okay? So don't read too much into this. That said, if you do have concerns about your cognitive abilities, please talk to your doctor about it. That said, I was kind of thinking about this, and it kind of hit me like, oh crap, I've basically ruined all of you with respect to the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. Like, let's say, you do have a cognitive impairment like Alzheimer's or something, and then you go to take this test, but you ace it because you saw the answers in this YouTube video. So I would say, look, if a medical professional wants to administer this test, the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, to you in the future, please let them know that you already kind of took it in a YouTube video, and then share this video with them. And don't only share this video with them, but share it with all your friends so you can see how they did as well. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Stay sharp.